Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com. This is TWiT Photo with Catherine Hall and Leo Laporte. Episode 21, recorded August 23rd, 2011. Tyler Stableford. TWiT Photo is brought to you by Squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to create a high-quality website or blog. For a free trial and 10% off your new account for 6 months, go to Squarespace.com and use the offer code TWITPHOTO8. And by Netflix. Watch thousands of TV episodes and movies on your PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, or TV instantly. All streamed directly to you, saving you time, money, and hassle. For your free 30-day trial, go to netflix.com/twit. It's time for TWiT Photo, the show that covers all your photographic needs. Actually, it really covers the art of photography, and that's what I love. And, you know, that's partly because our host is such an artist herself, Catherine Hall.
Thank you, Leo.
Good to see you.
Nice to see you as well. I'm so glad to have you back.
Yay.
We missed you.
Is this the first time since I've been on the show?
Alex did an amazing job, but it's great
I love
to have
Alex,
you back.
and he's a
I know,
much better
Alex
photographer than I am, but nevertheless, I love doing this show.
Yeah.
This is a show where we really interview great photographers, and we talk about their work. We talk about how they do it, but also look at their art. And I just love looking at
amazing photographs.
Great photographs.
I know.
What could be wrong with that? Speaking of which, Catherine Hall's website is catherinehall.net or catherinehallstudios.com. And here it is. There's some great pictures on there. Actually, Tony, let me take it because I want to show. You're going to start doing this every week, a single image.
And a quick tip to go along with it.
That we could talk about, yeah.
Yeah, so this one is just to be aware of what's around you, and there may be props inside an environment that you're shooting in that would help improve your photographs.
So he wasn't wearing the mask?
So he wasn't wearing the mask. However, the mask was native to his environment.
Right.
So it definitely felt true and authentic. And so it was something he played with. So I said, oh, why don't you put on the mask? And it definitely made for a more compelling image. So when you're shooting...
You must love kids, because you could do the best kid pictures I've ever seen.
Well, thank you.
You really draw, you really get... First of all, it's hard with kids because initially they'll pose, although I have to say kids are probably more truthful than adults ultimately, right?
They are, and that's actually one of the reasons why I'm so attracted to children is they don't care.
Yeah,
so they're not going to put up a facade or a wall, or they don't care what they look like. So they're just sort of themselves.
You want to see another kid?
I love this picture so much.
I'm like a kid in a candy store here. This is from our Brick House grand opening. You were here in that beautiful dress.
Thank you.
And your assistant,
it matched
Trish.
the studio. There's more if you scroll down. Trish is on there. For all of you guys that want to know who CHS Trish is, it's on here. There's Alex.
So great. Alex Lindsay.
Yeah.
Dick DiBartolo kind of joined us via Skype.
He was
that was
fun.
hysterical.
Yeah, that was great.
Colleen Kelly, our original engineer. There's Trish. Yep. Is your boyfriend in here somewhere? He's the
He's the photographer.
He's the photographer. I thought that was so funny. You weren't working the party.
Oh no,
he was.
I was not taking photos.
Yeah,
but
you
there's
just
me and
enjoyed
Trish.
yourself.
For anyone that wants to know.
So gorgeous.
I love Trish.
Yep. Robert Scoble, Dane Jasper. There's our CEO and the heart and soul of the operation.
I know. Lisa's
Lisa
amazing.
Kensel. She looked great too. Everybody got all dressed up.
Beautiful.
It was so nice.
And there's Eileen. Love Eileen.
Eileen, our producer, Chris Marquardt, Bob Heil. This is fun. So this is all at catherinehall.net if you want to see more.
If you want to check it out.
Ryan Brushwood and his flaming finger
I can't believe
fate.
he's never been to Burning Man. I thought he must have been.
You're a burner, aren't you?
Yeah, I kind of am. I'm not going this year, though.
You're not?
I'm taking a year off.
So I just watched a documentary about Burning Man. I'll talk about it in a little bit on our Netflix ad, but I really enjoyed it, and it really gave me a new sense of the artistic side of Burning Man. It's really an art event.
It really is, yeah, definitely.
So I can see why you would go.
I mean, everyone thinks it's like a naked hippie drug fest.
That's what I thought it was, and it isn't. It's an art event.
No, it's not. There's a couple naked people here and there, but for the most part, it's a lot of creative people or people that have very technical jobs that can't be creative, and so for that 1 week, they can kind of like come out and be free. So engineers and doctors and lawyers, it's like their 1 week to sort of show their true colors in a way.
It's Labor Day weekend. It's coming up. It's too late for us to go. Tickets have been sold out for a long time. Can we all go next year and maybe do a show?
Yeah, that would be awesome. We got to get Colleen to go too.
Yeah, I'm sure she's never been either.
She's never been.
And Liz is jumping up and down. Liz, you want to go to Burning Man? All right.
Yeah, Liz.
I think we should do a show from Burning Man. I don't know if they let you do that, but I would
Lisa
love
and
to do
Eileen
that.
said people have been trying to talk them into going too.
All right. We'll get a TWiT RV. That's the best way to do it.
Yeah. Oh, you have to get an RV.
Yeah. And you
Or
can,
have some sort of structure that's.
yeah. No, we need an
desperate, not a
RV
tent.
because we have a lot of gear.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of people. And you want to do that? Lisa's looking at me. No, she's looking at a spreadsheet. That's why she's looking funny.
ignoring us.
She's looking at numbers.
She's actually working.
Hey, we've got a great guest.
Yeah,
Tell us who
sorry.
we have on the show
Tyler.
today.
So anyway, I'm so happy to have Tyler with us here today. I have to say, the first time I met Tyler was in New York, and Stephen Glima, the Canon marketing guru, he introduced me and he said, "This guy's work's amazing." And I looked at his work and my jaw hit the floor. I mean, he does adventure sports, but his work has this sort of grittiness, but yet it's polished at the same time. But his composition, his lighting, just everything about it is so just
They look like
spot on.
paintings.
Yeah.
They really do. I mean, they're so perfect.
It's kind of, actually, I look at it and I get a little sick. It's so good.
Is it
I could never do this.
Well, let's say, welcome, Tyler. It's great to have you.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Leo. Thanks,
Your work's
Catherine. Nice to
amazing.
see you
And the
guys.
thing about Tyler, too, that people might not know is he's just a really amazing human being. Very just spiritual, good-intentioned guy. So very happy to get to know you and have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll try to keep my cool for the show.
Yeah. And
Blow
he's got
my-
a lot of toys for the gear
Blow my
people
goodness.
out there.
Well, and that's one of the things that strikes me is there's a lot of technical expertise in these images. You can really feel that you are very technical and very focused on the lighting. I mean, composition's great. The color's great. Of course, it's a beautiful photograph. It's a beautiful work of art. But I can feel the skill also involved in
definitely.
this. Yeah.
So, and that's
Can I show this video? Should I show this?
Yeah, we're going to start off. We're going to kick it off with your fighter pilot video.
What do you think?
Okay, great.
Here we go. Riding into the danger zone with Tyler Stableford.
So, yeah, just a 90-second promo.
Sock 61 is base gear low approach. Sock 61, roger, wind 040 with 3, 32, clear low approach.
Reporters, commentators, military and civil defense observers all had a
Red 21, number 1, runway 14.
Red 21 flight Buckley Tower, runway 14 at Alpha, position and hold.
Position, hold, Red 21.
Request release, Red Eye 21 flight, runway 14, requesting the sandbox.
Hold, release, clear back.
Red Eye 21 flight, depart the sandbox heading 090 at or above 15,000 to maintain flight level.
Red Eye 21 flight is released through the sandbox over the sandbox head above 15,000. The heading is 090. Climb maintain flight level 230. Release.
230-090 on the go at or above 15.
Thanks, sir.
Sock 61 is base gear low approach. Sock 61, roger, wind 040 with 3, runway 32, clear low approach.
What a fun assignment. Tell us about that assignment. How did you get it, first of all?
Yeah, this is a good one, Leo. I pitched this as an editorial assignment to Denver's regional magazine, 5280 magazine. And through that, I got an editorial assignment to cover essentially what it is about the fighter pilots, the F-16 fighter pilots, who are citizen soldiers. So they were the Colorado Air National Guard.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so they're half, most of the time they live in the Denver community. They live off of the base. And the other times, they're called to do full Air Force tours of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan and such. And so this was the story about Denver's hometown heroes that you may not know.
Wow.
And that got me great access to Buckley Air Force Base and eventually to fly with a sortie of 5 F-16s over the Rockies for 90 minutes.
Incredible.
How are you getting these very dynamic angles?
Like that. Like that.
I mean, how do you even get that?
So that was with a 5D with the 15mm fisheye I'm holding out actually in front of me, and I've asked the pilot to do a number of barrel rolls as we're.
But are you sitting under the dashboard? Where are you?
Yeah, that's
So
what I
I'm
want
in
to
the
know.
back seat of a 2-seater F-16D model,
And you have a remote.
and I'm
shoving?
hand holding the camera right out in front
You're
of me.
hand holding the
actually.
camera. Wow.
Yeah, just holding my arms out and taking a whole bunch of photos and then looking at the back of the screen and checking if I got some now and then. And then this is looking forward at the pilot, Tonight Laporte, and the 4 jets flying in formation over Pikes Peak, a 14,000-foot peak, Colorado.
So are you hand-holding the camera in all of these for the most part?
Yeah, almost everything here is handheld. Yeah, and it allows us to work, really, really quickly and such. Yeah, and at times we'd add lights, and other times we'd work with natural light depending on where it was coming from. And these, adding a strobe here.
The 5D Mark II video shot with that as well.
Yes, those were the 5D and the 1D Mark IV. Yep, so all with Canon DSLR cameras, which is amazing. So I can go out and shoot, stills, high-resolution stills. This is my team as we're working behind the scenes. Cinematographer Kent Harvey came along, and Draper White's holding the reflectors here. And this just shows kind of our sign of our setups where we're getting a little bit of video at the time, and then Kent will step out, and then we'll get a still. This is of pilot Paul Feithinger, and a follow-up article ran on him and some of his fellow pilots who are commercial airline pilots for Southwest Airlines as well. So that ran in Southwest Airlines magazine about some of these fighter pilots.
They probably love doing this.
The final shot we got of Paul there from that setup. So you can see the reflector coming in now and how that lights his face. We're backlit there.
Right. Interesting. You use a cinematographer. You don't trust yourself to do the video?
Oh, I do lots of times. Kent's been very much a mentor to me as I've been learning more about cinematography. So I certainly shoot and did shoot a lot of this myself, but always love working with talented people. Always.
So you started off, he actually got a degree from Dartmouth for journalism. So he started off writing. So I want to know, how did you learn to transition from telling stories with words to telling stories with imagery?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess they do go hand in hand, and so I started off mostly as a writer, and that helped give me a lot of access to stories and such. I taught myself or learned through the process how to pitch stories, and I think that's very important as a freelance photographer when pitching your work as well, to get accepted, even to a commercial agency or to a project. So the images we're going through now are some behind the scenes of when we were in the KC-135 refueler, and you can see how we're shooting. We're seeing the controller here, the guy who lies on his belly in the back and controls the boom arm to the F-16 that's being refueled. And then I would shove my camera right into the window whenever I wasn't going to. Well, as long as I wasn't in danger of knocking the joystick, that would hit the boom arm, would hit the F-16, and then shoot video. And so it was a very quick process. And so this was my 2 kids, Sam and Annabelle, here before I got in the jet. And so this is the 2-seater F-16 in the background. That
waving
you see
goodbye
there.
to Daddy.
Back seat, yeah. My daughter liked the helmet.
I know.
Yeah. Wow. That's fantastic.
I was smiling, but I was trying to keep together. My nerves were
Oh my gosh, I can only imagine.
Terrifying.
I was terrified. Well, in part because I heard all these terrible stories about what the fighter pilots do to you when you go on a flight. And
they try to make you barf.
Yeah. Yes. And they do.
How do you handle...
That turned to be true.
When you're in such an intense working environment, how do you handle your nerves?
This was a really hard one. For this, I did take a motion sickness patch, which one of the flight surgeons had recommended, just a small thing you put behind your ear, and then otherwise, it just a fair bit of some meditation, but then also just a lot of thought of thinking about it, of visualizing the shoot. A lot of times before a very busy shoot, I'll spend time visualizing that, and then, a lot of athletes do this as well. It's a proven success method for improving your performance under stress and pressure.
So do you have any tips for people that want to tell a story? I mean, you say to pitch this story to, is a newspaper that you did? I'm sorry?
Yeah, I pitched it to a magazine. Yep.
Yeah. So when you're coming together, you're preparing a pitch, or just you don't even have to be a professional. You're an amateur and you want to tell a story. Yeah. How do you do that with imagery?
Well, what I would say is access is everything if you want to get access to a good location. And so let's say you wanted to get access to, some really cool cargo ships or something in a harbor, and the tugboats that pull them around. Well, it would be helpful if, rather than just calling and saying, "Hey, can I come on the boats?" which maybe you could, maybe not. If you worked with a local tourism board, maybe that's something of interest to them, and then they endorsed you. So that's where a pitch comes in helpful. So I'll take time to, even the smallest of editorial assignments. It can be for any type of web piece or blog or small town newspaper. Just having some type of calling card rather than being a photographer photographer who wants to show up and trip over everything on the boat is going to get you a far way. So that would be my one main tip for getting access to restricted locations.
Do you feel that that's applicable to both amateurs and pros?
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. And amateurs, even if you're not a pro, but you could do a lot of great service for a local tourism board or something like that. And I think that's very, I would encourage amateurs to do the same. Just step into the hot seat and start shooting.
I mean, how do you pitch which type of subject that you want to, what type of story you want to do?
Think of fun field trips. That would that be exciting.
Do what you want to do.
Yeah, do what
pick
you're
the ones
passionate about.
Yeah.
Yes, very much so. And then also and then you can hone things. Well, what do I need for my portfolio? What do I need to be able to make a a living for this quarter or this month or whatever? Different triangulations of things that all hopefully fit together in one. What will have a good resale value too, so that because inevitably editorial assignments are quite low. I certainly can't support a studio of 3 or 4 employees here of us. So we need to continue to have a commercial business or have a stock life and sales beyond the original assignment.
That's something every pro that we've talked to has to solve in their own way. Is how do you make a living at this? How do you get to balance the things that you love to do with the things that you do to make money? And it's always interesting to hear each of them talk about that.
It's always a balance.
And
definitely.
and everybody has their own unique solution depending on what your interests and goals are. How much of your work is editorial?
I'd probably not more than 10 or 20% or so, if that, and the rest really is commercial. A lot of catalog work here in the Aspen area that we do.
I love this series that you do.
Yeah, so these are some video capture frames. That's why it looks a little blurry here, of a wounded warrior named Heath Calhoun, on which I made a 14-minute DSLR documentary called The Fall Line. And so these are just a couple of behind-the-scenes production stills of us working, and we may be able to play a trailer for that. And this was my first full-fledged DSLR film, and it was a real entry for me. This was 2 winters ago we shot.
The weightlifting.
Were you scared of switching from stills to moving?
I don't think I was scared. In fact, I had never shot video before, Catherine. But with this now, the 5D, when it came out and did that, it was revolutionary, and so that got me very excited to have all the same tools, all the same great lenses that I'd had. Now I can, be shooting video. I don't have to buy a whole new package of gear to accomplish this type of storytelling. So,
boy, these coal mine shots are really beautiful, really dramatic.
Yeah, and these are some photos we took from a recent Timberland Pro work boot campaign for some new coal mining boots that they have coming up. And so this lighting was very challenging, really fun too, in a way to, we're essentially promoting work boots, coal mining boots. So it had a light black boots with silver reflective piping in a coal mine and make them look, authentic, which they are. I mean, these are real miners. We're working with them during their work day and such.
What I like is this. I didn't know it was an ad campaign. I just thought these were gorgeous shots. Yeah. They could have been editorial shots. I mean, now that I see the boots are highlighted, but these are just really. It must be satisfying for you to get an ad gig where you can really make some art too.
Yeah. So,
that was the real joy. This campaign, they wanted it as gritty and as authentic and real as possible, and so we shot in a real, action coal mine with coal miners on staff, and it was a real joy for all of us. Yeah.
These are. I mean, this is a great. This reminds me of some of the work that you do, Catherine. It was just the gritty reality of these people.
How
Catherine
often
has great shots of the working people in the world.
Yep.
How much are you shooting real people versus models?
I would say the majority of the time it's models that we're working with, and when we hire this coal mine was an exception because
these guys are not models.
They're definitely models. Which do you prefer, Tyler?
It varies, Catherine. That's a very good question. I think that real workers, when we're hiring roughnecks on a oil rig or in a coal mine and such, you can get great niches of expressions from them that are very real, but they don't have range, right? They're not going to do lifestyle images. They're not going to do piggyback rides with a smile and such, which is fine. We don't need that for coal mining. But, a real model can give you a range. He can play the rough guy sawing wood, but then he can also, give his girlfriend a piggyback through the wildflowers.
So tell us about the lighting on this, because this is beautifully lit. The detail, spectacular.
So we had the camera on a tripod down low. We were shooting at maybe a 1/13 of a second or so for this. You can see a little bit of motion blur in the worker's arms here. And the way we tried to decide how could we make this shot, and we have to light this boot in such a way that you can tell what it is, so people can understand it, and that Timberland Pro can market this. So we had what we call scissor lights. We had two soft boxes with speed lights, Canon speed lights, the 580 EX2s in Westcott Apollo soft boxes, one on either side of the subject here, and then another speed light with a very small softbox illuminating the boot from the backside. And so that was the extent of the lighting. And then the other lighting is from the bolting truck that's against the mine here. Yeah. And we put sticky filters, the little gel filters on the 580 speed lights, so that we could match the tungsten or fluorescent light that was coming out. In this case, it was tungsten light.
Right. Is there a lot of Photoshop involved in a shot like this? Now remember, this is not editorial. This is an ad, so you'd be allowed to paint this picture any way you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a fair bit of Photoshop that goes in, just in terms of removing anything that's distracting to getting your eye to where the where the story is here. And so for that, my first assistant Draper White does quite a bit of that, and I can bring him on to at least say hi at some point. Yeah, Draper, do you want us to come in and say a quick hi? At least
let's say hi to the Photoshop wizard.
Draper's really the guy here, and then he can tell you all the lies about me. Here, have this on there.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
Taylor's sharing the spotlight with his assistant.
Draper, I have a question. Do you live in Lightroom or in Photoshop more?
It all kind of starts in Lightroom and then ends up going into Photoshop. So, but most of our files go through Lightroom first, and the final portfolio images go into Photoshop. So, yeah.
And what time do you which app or which program do you spend more time in, Lightroom or Photoshop? On average.
Photoshop's probably a little more time-consuming per image, but when we're doing Lightroom files, I mean, we're working on hundreds of images, so it takes a lot more time that way too. So it's 50-50 sometimes. It's not really one or the other.
Number one Lightroom tip and number one Photoshop tip for us.
We're getting some freebies in
here.
here.
I'm like, gotta go fast. Gotta get these in there.
One thing I love about Lightroom is just that it's so easy to play around with, and there's so many different things you can do really quickly just to get a different look. And so my number one tip would probably be just play around with it. I mean, you can't really go wrong, and you can always go back, and so it's just a great way to experiment. And
what slider do you always use on every image that comes in Lightroom?
Clarity.
Clarity's a good one.
Looks like clarity's used a lot in these.
Clarity, baby.
A lot of clarity, yeah. The clarity is great for making really, grungy looking images and giving a lot of contrast without kind of overdoing it. But
these are great. I see clarity everywhere on these. They're so beautiful. Yeah.
Yep. And we try to apply it selectively if it's in the mountains or something. Sometimes it gets a little funky, but yeah, it's a great. I would definitely. Clarity is one of the ones I always go to.
What's your favorite Photoshop tool?
Healing brush, probably.
Thank God for the healing brush.
Me too.
It's a great one.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. I appreciate you popping in and giving tips.
No problem.
Oh, yes. Someone in the chat room just said this, and I want to just echo it. He says it's in 5GM. Clarity is terrible for human skin. And yes, you have to be really careful when you're painting clarity, because it will bring out the imperfections of people's skin.
Yeah, you don't want so much detail. You want a softer thing on the face and then a more detailed thing everywhere else, right?
Well, if you have a coal miner and he's got grit and stuff all over his face, then it's cool.
Don't put it on your girlfriend.
But don't put it on your girlfriend.
But that's what's great about Photoshop 3 now, is you have these regions, and so you can say clarity here, but let's do a little soft light here,
Yeah, exactly.
And mix it up.
Definitely.
We're going to take a little break. This is so much fun. I want to look at your website some more. You've got some tips for us and more of your pictures, too, in just a little bit. So don't go anywhere. We don't want to lose you here. But briefly, I do want to talk about, when I say website, I mean, this is the key for a photographer these days, is having a website where people can see your work, see your imagery, and appreciate it. And if you're a working photographer, how important is it that they be able to find you on the web, find out what you do, and that's where Squarespace is so great. I am a huge Squarespace fan. We talk about it an awful lot. And, of course, they are a sponsor of many of our shows. They say the secret behind exceptional websites. I would agree. You can try it right now very easily, very simply. Let me explain, though. This is both a web hosting company, so they host your site, and integrated into it the best software. So it's really the best of both worlds. It's kind of a one-stop shop for a place to make your new website. They won't get too technical, but they use Java in the background for virtual server technology. It means they never run out of bandwidth. These guys that created Squarespace, Anthony and Dane and the gang, did it in college because they wanted to have their own web hosting and their own web hosting tool, and then they realized this is a business. Go to squarespace.com, click the Try It Free button. You don't need a credit card. You can set up a site, use all the Squarespace tools. You need 3 things: the name for your site, a password for your site, and your email address so they can email you when the site is about to expire to give you the chance to subscribe, and that's it. But you'll get to use all these great features, the 60-plus designer templates, the iPhone and iPad applications that let you not only post and moderate comments, but see your stats, the best stats ever. Really important to know what sites, what pages people look at, where they spend their time, what they don't look at. Photo galleries built in are fantastic. Of course, there's complete support for Flickr and widgets like that, but you can also create your own photo gallery. A lot of very good photographers are using Squarespace because it's easy. You know, big guys like the kinds of people like Catherine, Tyler, the people we talk to, they can afford to bring in, spend a lot of money on web design. People like me, I just use Squarespace. You know,
and it's good that what you were mentioning, it's all in one spot.
So easy.
I think the most difficult thing for me is the more people you bring in, the more, if you have a designer hosting, like all these different companies, if something goes wrong, they all kind of blame each other.
Right. Now, I got to tell you, if you're using their templates and you do have a designer, you have full CSS control. So it's not like you're giving up control. Sometimes these easy-to-use, point-and-click interfaces, you give up control. No, you've got JavaScript, you've got CSS. You can use it all. Look, the best thing to do is give it a try. Go to squarespace.com, click the green Try It Free button, and set up a site. See if you like it. And by the way, if you do, and you decide you want to subscribe, use the offer code TWiTphoto8 on checkout, and you'll save 10% a month for the first 6 months. That's a pretty good deal, just for using TWiTphoto8, and then that'll let Squarespace know that you watch the show too, and we appreciate that. TWiTphoto and the number 8, Squarespace.com. Tyler Stableford is with us. His website is gorgeous, and you know what I love is all these guys. Tyler, you put your best shots on the front page, right? I mean, those are the shots you care most about, right?
That's the way to do it, I think. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lead with the best stuff.
Lead out and then edit out the weak ones.
Don't waste time. Yes.
Yeah.
Don't waste time getting to the message. Yep.
So, Tyler, you shoot a lot of adventure sports, which is a very desirable field of photography. How did you get into it?
Yeah. I started, I guess I learned to rock climb when I was 14, and it just took me. I'm still continue to be so enamored by the sport, and so that's been one of the big continuities in my life. So that's a big thing, and I guess that's how I got into action photography, was just by having a passion for being in the outdoors, hiking and climbing and mountaineering, skiing, and trying to bring an emotion to those, or to capture an emotion that I could bring home and share with others. And that's really where photography started, and for me.
So it looks like you use a wide angle in a lot of your work. Is that true, and why? Yeah,
wide angle, I do quite a bit. The wider, the better. If I'm always working with the 15mm fisheye, or a 14mm, or the 16 to 35, and those are the lenses that I would, hold on to, to the last if I had to give any up, because it allows me to capture a subject in motion, and also tell a larger story in the background. And that's what's so amazing about a wide-angle lens. You can also take the worst photos of your life with a wide-angle lens if you don't do it correctly, because people's faces look distorted, or they look too far away.
You'd have to have a wide-angle lens to get this shot. Wow!
Yes, this is a 15mm fisheye lens. Yeah, that's shot amazing. On a full-frame camera.
We're going to talk about these two shots in just a little bit. These are the two he's picked. So I don't want to. Telegraph those. Look at that shot.
Yeah.
Wow.
So these are all wide-angle lens photos, and that for me is it's also what I come to in the outdoors, is that it's a place of great exploration and wide openness of mind and body and the land itself. So I guess that's how I see the world, is through a wide-angle lens a lot of times.
Do you like to be close to your subjects?
A lot of times, yes. This fishing shot here is different, and that's where I chose a long lens. And we'll talk about this in the tips of when to choose a wide lens, when to choose a long lens. But if you want to amplify morning mist, you have to use a long lens. A wide lens is going to minimize the amount of mist, and it really won't look spectacular at all. So
this is the best shot I've ever seen for capturing the joy of fly fishing and the solitude and the calm. You just nailed it, you know?
As long as he doesn't hook his dog, right? With the
or you're standing in front of him.
It's all calm until that happens.
Your images of motion have such an authenticity to them. How do you keep that? I'm imagining you are having your subjects do things over and over and over again to capture it. How do you keep the authenticity there with repetitive action?
Right. So it only looks authentic, I guess.
Now this is not staged. Come on.
Yes. It's like
this is staged. I bet you.
Is this staged?
This was staged as well. It's with U.S. Marines at Quantico Marine Base in Virginia, but we had them jumping in and out of the boat many times. And Marines are the greatest of models because this was probably the easiest day they've ever had. You know, they were psyched not to be doing whatever else it was they were doing that day. So jumping in and out of the boat 50 times for the camera was
they're happy. They don't mind.
They've ever had. Yeah. Yeah, but so it is. It's what I do is I'll stand in the position of the subject. You have to be willing as a photographer to tell your subjects exactly what it is you want. Sometimes when you have, fully pro models, that can give you something more than you expected. But otherwise, a lot of times we're casting local athletes or skiers or ranchers, construction workers. And if we want something expressive from them that we can capture in a still frame, I need to almost put the camera down, put my hand on their shoulder and say, this is what I'm expecting from you. This is the motion we want. We want, a little more fluidity in the hips when you're running or a little higher stride and so forth. So that's really important. You have to be able to talk to your subjects and act out what you want.
I'm going to jump forward a little bit because we've seen some of these, so I'm going to jump
That does a lot for when you're not shooting real models is because people are nervous. I mean, they're not used to being in front of the camera. So if you give them something to focus on instead of feeling awkward, then you find that you get much better imagery from that.
And you also make them a part of the solution, a part of solving the challenge, and say, hey, here, look, this is what I'm trying to capture as an emotion.
I love this shot.
And you bring the camera back to them. You share the back of the screen with them, and say, here's what I'm capturing. Maybe it's perfect, or here's what I'm looking for a little more. And then you and your subject are co-creators of this process, which is, for me, is way better, way more fun, way more powerful than being the invisible, shutter clicker behind the lens. So everything I take with almost my subjects, it's very much a process. They know I'm there. I'm sharing everything with them.
So when you're shooting portraits, obviously you're shifting away from your wide angle. What's your lens of choice in that situation?
Yeah, I'd say as much as I love wide angles, I probably shoot with the 70 to 200 f2.8, the Canon lens there, just because it's incredible image stabilization, unbelievable optics, and it just gives you a great range to be able to come closer or further out. So you can do a head and shoulders portrait standing in the same spot, and then zoom out for a waist-up portrait and include a little more background. And that's invaluable because I never know exactly what's going to work best in a portrait. You just don't. So I'm always zooming around a little bit, even many years into it.
How many shots will you take to get this image? Many?
Oh, well, those Ethiopia shots, those are different in where I'm taking some, let's say, some very sensitive portraits and people in very difficult times. So I'm not gonna rip 200 frames of them. It's maybe a couple dozen or so.
Okay. But boy, these are gorgeous.
When I'm doing a shoot with an athlete or whatever, we'll shoot 2,500 images easily in an afternoon, or for a sunset shoot. Yeah.
What lighting do you typically use with your portraiture?
Portraiture, it varies. Sometimes I like some good backlight. We'll talk about that for some of the tips. And otherwise, I'll do a couple things. I also have the gear tips I'll talk about with some of my lighting. I use the Porty, the Hensel Porty strobes, which I find great for high power strobes, or I'll go to Canon speed lights. The other thing that's really successful in all the Ethiopia shots that we're showing here, I had no added light. And really, you want to work with backlight or doorway light or window light coming in. So in this case, we have almost the midday sun hitting this girl from behind, and I'm shooting onto a concrete wall in the background. And it's really the light that's reflected is really light from a courtyard that's just filling into her eyes there.
That's what's amazing. I mean, you knew that those eyes were going to be the dramatic part of that picture, and you had to find some way to light them and to make them pop
Yeah,
when you did.
and ironically enough, and it took me a while to learn this, Leo, but I say, oh, we want to bring out the light in her eyes. Let's put her into the sun. Well,
Right.
it's actually going to diminish the shot.
Right.
Her eyes are going to come so much more forward if you take her out of the light and shoot her backlit, in what we call open shade or something like that.
I love the dynamic it creates too, having that. I mean, you see she's obviously lived a hard life, but having that harsh backlight sort of accentuates that grittiness and the way that she looks. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So going back to the sports stuff.
Sure.
I wanted to give our viewers a couple tips on how, since it is such a hard field to get into, or amateurs that just want to get out and shoot sports, what are some tips or a tip for building a portfolio? All right, let me ask you this, Tyler. How can a skier wanting to be sponsored by Red Bull help you as a photographer?
Right. Yeah. So I think this applies whether you are shooting, let's say, middle schoolers playing soccer, or you're shooting a professional level athlete. Of course, it's hard to get access to, let's say, a NFL superstar. But let's say you're shooting a sponsored pro skier here in the Aspen area where I live, or you're shooting your kids playing soccer. If you want to build your sports portfolio, the main thing is to engage the people you want to photograph as part of the process and say, hey, what do you want for your portfolio? What would help you or just make you happy to have, for your family or in your wall? And then work together as a collaboration, because you'll get so much more generosity of time from your subjects that way. So, certainly here in Colorado, there's lots of skiers who want to be sponsored by, a skiing company or sunglass company or whatever. And they're thrilled to get out and have, a photographer, of any level come out and shoot them and photograph what they're passionate about. So that's my first and foremost tip, really, is to lose your your shyness and approach somebody that you want to photograph, and at whatever level you are, amateur or pro, and say, here's what I can offer. And even if you're an amateur, the fact that you own an SLR camera, know how to operate it and compress the shutter and get a decent exposure now and then, makes you supremely more qualified than most of the other let's say athletes that this guy's hanging out with.
Yeah, and going back on what you were saying, athletes love photographs of themselves competing
absolutely do.
Or doing their craft. And
it's one of their life passions, and they love to have.
And so you'd be surprised how many people. I mean, I used to live in Squaw, and I wasn't a pro photographer. I was definitely an amateur at the time, and I never had anyone say no to me wanting to take pictures of them. It was like, yeah, of course, when, where, let's do it.
Yes.
So.
Let's get Tyler's tips in just a second, shall we? Because he's got some great tips for us, and 2 images that we're going to look at that he asked us to particularly highlight, and we'll talk about. Before we do that, though, I want to talk a little bit about watching movies. I knew I wasn't going to get to Burning Man this year. I've never been to Burning Man, and I found until next year. We're going to do it next year, and I found a great documentary, and I have to say this is why I love Netflix, because I can watch it instantly. So if you go to netflix.com/twit right now, you get a 30-day subscription free to Netflix streaming. And one of the movies I'm going to absolutely recommend, the one I just watched, is this documentary. It was shot in 2005 of Burning Man. And I tell you, it was where I realized it isn't just kind of a crazy drug-fueled hippie party in the desert. It's, in fact, great art is being made out there. In fact, one of the artists lives right here in Petaluma.
Oh, really?
He does those great cathedrals.
Oh, nice.
Every year, and they burn it every year, which is kind of amazing.
So crazy.
Yeah. TV, Mad Men, Glee, The Tudors. That was a great series. Talk about beautiful photography.
You can type in A Walk to Beautiful. This is Tyler's favorite recent watch.
A Walk to Beautiful.
Yeah.
I don't know it. Oh, I'm so excited.
They have everything. He gave me this obscure title, and I was thinking, oh.
In Ethiopia, a country with few hospitals and even fewer roads, 3 women on a journey to rebuild their lives. This is a documentary, and you can watch it tonight if you have a Netflix subscription. Now, most of you do. I know that. But if you don't, go to netflix.com/twit and sign up today if you get 30 days free. And if you do already have a subscription, do us a favor and tell friends or family. Let them know how great Netflix is. Netflix.com/twit. They've got a 30-day subscription waiting for them. You know what? This is one of the movies recommended that I watch. So
really?
It was in my recommendation list. So I'm going to absolutely,
I'll
add that to my instant
similar
queue.
tastes.
I love documentaries. I really do. I think they're great. Netflix.com/twit. Oh, see, then when you put that in your queue, then it gives you a whole bunch of more documentaries that you might want to watch. That's what I love.
Me too.
Netflix.com/twit. We are ready for Tyler's tips. And you've given us some good ones. We're going to start with a tip about the sun.
Yes.
So I'll start it off. Shoot. Okay, this is fun because I think it's so contrary to what people believe. Shoot into the sun.
What? No, come on. Don't you want the sun at your back?
It took me about 10 years to break away from this. I sure wish I had. Like many things in life, right? You wish you knew certain things in your teens and 20s. But it took me a while to look at some of the favorite images that my, other peers or heroes and such were creating in the outdoor world, and realized that so many of them were shot directly into the sun. And it takes some time to control lens flare, but that's really your only... the only real challenge. Well, there's two challenges. One is lens flare. The second is hard shadows that are on your subject. So really, the tip is shoot into the sun, and if you need to, there's two things. You can either just expose for your subject, who's now going to be a little bit darker, and let the background go nice and bright and out of focus, overexposed, and that can have its own great look. Or something that we do if we want a little more controlled look is we'll add a reflector to fill in the shadows on the subject.
Yeah.
I like that.
Do you have any tips on photographers avoiding lens flare?
The main thing is when you look through the viewfinder, you will see the lens flare, all that's coming in. So just move the camera around so that lens flare is not streaking right against your subject's face at the time.
And a little lens flare, as in this shot, is great.
Yeah.
I mean, it really...
And I think we retouched some. I think we took some out. There was probably a little more. Being Draper, not me. But yes.
Well, this is one of those shots you really don't get to take more than a couple of images of.
You don't get more than a couple, right? And also, what's interesting when shooting skiing, it's incredibly bright. There was a snowball essentially behind me as well, and that's acting as a big reflector onto the subject. So we didn't really need to do, all that much Photoshop work necessarily either to bring the light and action to the subject.
This is a trickier shot though than most would realize, because it's hard to get snow white, for instance. Because the camera wants to make it 50% gray.
Yeah, well, how many stops over are you shooting when you're in a snow environment?
So this shot, I am probably 2 stops, maybe 2.5 stops over if I was in aperture priority mode.
Yeah. Do you use filters? Are you using an ND filter here, maybe?
I don't use any filters. No, I just use a clear glass filter. And particularly, some polarizers would help blue the sky, but with a very wide angle lens, and this was a 15 millimeter fisheye. You get crazy striations of gradients from, almost rich blacks to the whites near the sun. It would be too much. So so I don't.
How are you handling your gear in these crazy conditions? Keeping it functioning,
keeping it dry.
Well, it's cold.
This case,
keeping it dry.
It's like bringing a carpenter's tool belt to the job. Really, is the way I look at our camera gear. We certainly try to protect it a little bit, but it's there to be used. We beat on it, and when it breaks, we send it in for repair. I find I get more good photos if I'm not afraid, if I'm not worrying about my camera gear. If I just put it, right on the edge of the water, or if I, lie down in the mud with it, or the snow falls on it for 2 hours, screw it. Who cares? The point is focus on the images and worry about the other stuff later. And obviously, you can do that when you're a pro, and you're being compensated to shoot photos. It's harder when you're.
And you have a deal with Canon, right? So if you break a camera, they're going to send you a new one.
So this is the great thing. The nice thing with Canon is I do have to buy all of my gear. But we get free repairs as Explorers Light, and that's just invaluable, and that has really set me free. But even before that, I'll honestly say, I was shooting all these adventure images long before I was a Canon Explorer. It's really important not to be afraid about getting yourself or your camera gear dirty or wet or whatever. You have to be focused on the image.
Yeah, I always make a joke about how you can tell a pro because their camera gear is all beat up and they don't really care about it.
Right.
I mean, I throw my camera around, and it's just kind of... So do you use a waterproof housing ever?
Yes, an EWA marine bag is a great way to go, and you can find them for point-and-shoot cameras or for SLR cameras. The thing I love about it is that they can use any different types of bodies. So, I've had the same camera housing, the EWA camera housing, for the last 5 years, and that's seen me through however many different cycles of, 5Ds, 1D cameras, 7D, and they all fit in there. Granted, you don't have a ton of controls, but you can access enough to make it work, and that works wonderfully. And when we're shooting fly fishing, to put the camera halfway in the water, half out, and just experiment that way.
Tip number 2, get the flash off the camera. You know, I have to say, I've been taking a lot of pictures with this X100. And
yeah, Zach's going to be proud.
Yeah.
Zach Arias brought this on.
Zach suggested this. And the flash is right over the lens.
The flash is right there, yeah.
And why do I want to get it off the camera?
Well, you'll get great snapshots that'll look like every other snapshot that everyone's
Bright
taken.
flash,
Yes.
right in the face. Actually, this camera, I don't know how it does it. It's almost like TTL metering or something. It actually is pretty smart about the flash. It doesn't overpower.
Oh, it doesn't?
Yeah,
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I'm very pleased to say. However, you know, you get more red eye this way. This is, and everything's over bright normally in this.
Yeah.
So is it enough to put the flash on the shoe and above the camera, or you say get it?
That helps. Even even putting it on a speed light that's whatever 6-8 inches above your lens is fine. But really, I'm talking about getting the flash off of the axis of the lens at all. And so this was at a Canon talk I had given in Iowa this winter. To a group of photographers, and I said, let's just see what we can create with one speed light, nothing else. We had a reflector that I think that was in front of the model, but let's just do one light. And what can we do with that? Let's get a whole bunch of great lens flare. Let's point the light almost straight at the camera. And so that's what we did with the triathlete here at Tanel. And essentially, you can see the flare and all the light that's screaming. The flash is almost right in the upper left there, and it's lighting across her face there, illuminating the bike in an interesting way. And if you look in the lens of her sunglasses, you can see we have a little bit of a silver reflector that's bouncing just a little bit of light. And the main reason to get the flash off the camera is A, it doesn't look like a snapshot, and B, the lighting's more dramatic. It just looks different from what we're used to seeing in the everyday life. And the more that your photos can look different than our everyday human eye, the more interesting it will be. The more time your readers will spend looking at your images and saying, oh, that feels special or different.
Those are the two things that instantly take your photos away from the snapshot realm. Is depth of field and off-camera lighting.
Hey,
that looks professional just by itself.
Tyler, what's a cheap way of getting your lens or getting your flash off your camera?
Well, what I'd say is probably if you have a flash, if you're working with like the Canon 7D already, it already has a built-in flash. The awesome thing about it is you can disable the flash but still use it as a trigger to trigger a remote speed light. So now you own one speed light and you can position that. Just use your same small tripod, maybe that you're already traveling with. Handhold your camera. And you're good to go for a really dramatically. You could create that exact same shot that I did with the first shot with the triathlete with one speed light. That's all it was.
We already talked a little bit about this tip: go wide or go long, but get rid of those standard lenses.
Yeah, the 18 to 55 kit lenses. They're that most come with most lenses. They're good, and you'll learn a bit about photography with them. But if you want to get a unique look, you want to go with wide lenses or long lenses at times. Of course, there's always exceptions to this, Leo. But here's an example of my lighting setup. Again, you can see where are the lights set up. The lights are nowhere close to the axis of the camera, and you get a more dramatic lighting look this way. So we're using what we call the scissor lights coming in on either side of our runner, and then a backlight. Draper's holding a strong backlight that's kind of bare bulbed going into her, and that's going to almost create a look of lens flare and sun flare, because I find it just creates a more loose, active feel to the images, more authenticity, if you call it that.
Even this behind-the-scenes picture looks really good,
Yeah. So this is up on top of Independence Pass above Aspen,
the legs
Colorado.
look so cool. The depth.
And this is an example of a wide lens. So this is maybe a 16-millimeter lens or a 14-millimeter lens. And you can see two things it does. One is with a wide-angle lens, you can put your camera right on the ground. You don't even have to look through the viewfinders. You don't have to crush your cheeks to the ground. Put the camera in live view mode so you're looking through just on the LCD screen itself, and you can be kneeling looking at it. Now you can put that camera right on the pavement and isolate your subject in the sky. If you ever have to photograph someone in a boring, baseball field or whatever, and there's just nothing, or there's a bunch of junky trucks in the background in the parking lot, get your camera way low to the ground, use a wide-angle lens, put your subject up in the sky, and suddenly their relation to all the rest of the world changes dramatically. So that's what a wide-angle lens can do. And you can see I'm paying very particular attention to how the mountains break and the road break the story there too. The rule of thirds more or less is perfect here, where if you draw a grid into thirds horizontally and vertically on the frame, the horizon's about 1/3. We have 2/3 of sky. We have a nice leading diagonal to the road. It's not going straight out in front of us. and then the subject is at, let's say, in the in the right third of the frame, running into the left 2/3, and so there's a sense of of tension or of emptiness that she's running towards. So that's the the rule of thirds there.
Did you spray oil on her legs, or is she actually?
Thank you. Yes, we sprayed oil on her. Yes, and this was copper tone tanning oil. And we've come to an even greater technique, which is Pam cooking oil. So when you want to
Pam, baby.
But when you want to start the revolution, there's Pam that works really well.
These are great.
And this is an example of a long lens. So this is working with a 70-200 millimeter lens. And now notice how the background drops immediately out of focus.
Yep.
You just can't hold the same amount of focus with a long lens as you can with a wide. Obviously, I could have included more, but I didn't want to. When I wanted, let's say you're turning the pages of a magazine or coming to a campaign, I want it very clear of where the reader's eye should go first. I want it to come to the power of this athlete's face and her. And then the background very much supports it. Then you can see the S-curve of the road. That's why we chose to shot right there. That plays into it, and the mountains. But this is what a long lens does. It can connect you a little bit more to your subject sometimes, and it drops the background out of focus. So anytime you have a very busy background, if you can't put your camera low to the ground with a wide-angle lens, or if that's not appropriate and for whatever reason, try it with a long lens. So those are the two ways I'll try to capture a subject, for an art director when they say, hey, shoot us some unique portraits of somebody. And particularly if there's not a set direction, I'll say, okay, well, I'm going to shoot you some full body wide angle shots and see what you think of those. And I'm going to send you some very long lens, 70 to 200 millimeter shots with a shallow depth of field and see what you think of those.
This is why when people don't understand why I don't like 3D movies. You don't need 3D. Look how much depth there is on that shot. That jumps out. It looks like a pop-up book, for crying out loud. It's totally 3D. You don't need any tricks.
Well, I love the thing that's great about the 70 to 200 too is just the way it compresses the background. So
and so the mountains look how, and that's the huge thing about the long lenses. If you notice, look how big the mountain is in the background. I'm in the exact same spot. If you go to the previous shot,
it's tiny.
I am in the exact same spot taking that photo. I mean, maybe
isn't that funny?
20 feet or something. So that's another thing that very important with long and wide lenses is the story you're telling with your background changes dramatically with them. But then it looks different from what you see with your everyday eye, and that's important to making it look good.
Love it. All right, we're going to take a look at two pictures, and then we're going to have to run because we don't want to take too much more of your time. So you're making so many great images.
This is great. Yeah, thanks for your
time. You away from creation.
Yeah, it's so good. So you gave us, and I'm going to pull them up here in a second, two images that you wanted to talk about. You wanted to highlight. And we've actually seen them both already, so I'm going to apologize to people. Start off with this amazing wide-angle shot of a snow cave.
So, Tyler, will you tell us the settings that you had for this shot and why?
Absolutely. So this was taken with the Canon 1DS camera, the original full-frame digital camera. And this was taken, several years ago at the time when the 1DS was the current camera, inside the Langjökull Glacier, an ice cave in Iceland, and with a 15-millimeter fisheye lens on it. And so, again, I'm just a huge fan of the wide lenses. And I was with Mark Jenkins, who was writing a column for Outside Magazine at the time, and he's now a National Geographic writer. And it adds some distortion. Wide-angle lenses do add some distortion to the frame, but that can also be, I use that all the time to be, as a bonus whenever we can, particularly when shooting climbers on cliffs and such, or skiers going off of cliffs. It can make them look bigger. It can also make them look like they're overhanging more. And for this case, I mostly just wanted to show this cave and the room of it here. So I'm standing maybe 15 feet below Mark, and I'm pointing the camera almost straight up at the ceiling. So you see the icicles on the left that looks like they're growing sideways. It's because they're essentially dead overhead for me. And the fisheye lens, the way it's curving is having them look like they're growing to the left. So we're actually looking up to the top of the ceiling and back behind me.
That's cool. And I love how you add the climber for scale. I mean, it's a beautiful picture even without the climber, but it's dramatic when you have the person in there and you go, oh, I get it. I see what's going on here.
Yeah, and so I took this shot at 1/40th of a second at f4 at ISO 200.
And why are you shooting at such a slow shutter speed?
Yeah, the main thing I was trying to do was not to crank the ISO up too high at the time, and that the 1DS camera did well, but it certainly had grain coming introduced as you got to ISO 800 or so. So I was trying to keep the ISO as low as possible, shooting at f4. When you're shooting with a very wide lens, like the 15mm fisheye, and you're focused on somebody who's 15 feet away, you're essentially at infinity, and everything's going to be in pretty good focus.
Yeah,
so that's
gotcha.
the nice thing with a wide lens. You don't need to shoot much more than f4 to have things in good focus. So that was why I shot at a 40th of a second. It was what I thought I could get a good still capture at a low ISO.
What's the slowest you'll go?
With a wide lens, I'll if I'm bracketing, Catherine, sometimes, if you shoot 3 photos, which I do all the time, let's say you're in aperture value mode and you bracket +1 and 0 and -1 and such, sometimes I can capture some that are about at a 20th of a second or so. If you're really locked down, you can get slower, but you don't want to push it too much. Yeah. It's not worth missing a shot.
You couldn't have a more different picture from this than your second shot, which is really all about feeling and emotion, and telling a story.
Yeah, and so both these photos were a couple of award winners. The last one was the cover of the Communication Arts Photo Annual several years ago, and this one was just named by Digital Photo Pro of their Image of the Year for their contest for 2010. It came out here in spring of 2011. And this was part of the F-16 fighter pilot shoot that I did at Buckley Air Force Base in Denver. And these are Sergeants Joe Emery and Daniel Bateman returning from a 60-day tour in Iraq to their loved ones. And it was one of the most emotional, experiences, just most powerful experiences I've ever seen. There were 250 airmen, men and women, returning from a 60-day tour, coming down, the gateway here, coming down the steps, and probably about 1,000 well-wishers, family, friends, supporters, are all just rushing at the stairs as these people come. Tears and joy. No one had been injured on this trip, so it was very much a happy, joyful homecoming. But here I'm working with a 16 to 35mm lens, and this is why you'll see, let's say, after a football game or after a hockey game, you see photographers on the field and they're holding up lenses, probably a 16 to 35, and they're holding it overhead or so, and they're just rapid firing. Because if you set your focus to, let's say, 5 feet away or so, you can then orbit that camera around and just shoot a whole bunch of shots and get the camera out of the way of other people in the foreground and such. So I used a 16 to 35mm lens for this. I shot at f2.8. It was actually at 19mm was the lens setting. 1/25th of a second at f6.3 at ISO 400. So I chose to shoot at f6.3. I said before it was an f2.8. It's an f2.8 lens, the 16 to 35 f2.8. I shot at f6.3, so that would give me a large enough depth of field that I didn't always have to have my eye glued to the eyepiece and focusing every time, because these emotions happen for literally a split second, not even for a full second before they're gone. So it allows me to just have the camera out and firing, trying to, scanning the crowd very much to try to find where we can isolate the subjects. At a time, it was very crowded, and it got crowded very fast, and try to tell an iconic story without, the backs of 150 people standing around in the background of the shot. So that was how this wide-angle lens helped me accomplish that.
And of course, the choice of black and white really focuses on the feelings as opposed to the colors or the composition. I guess you see the composition, but the feelings really jump out at you.
Definitely.
And that's the fun part about photography. We just decided, well, does this look better in color or black and white or some combination of the two?
Right.
And you'd be surprised. Sometimes you think, oh, it definitely should be in color, and then if you just play with it real quick in Lightroom and you go, oh, wait a minute, maybe I should do this in black and white. So Tyler, you have a couple workshops coming up. Where can people see you in action? And more depth.
And some of these information's on the Canon Live Learning website. I'm teaching a portraits and landscapes workshop in Aspen the weekend of September 24th. That will be, just beautiful high foliage here with the aspen trees changing foliage. On their website, we just saw a workshop I taught in Acadia National Park.
That looks so
with
cool.
lobstermen, and that was just an outstanding workshop. We had such a blast shooting on the seacoast there, and that was the first weekend in August. And then on my news blog, tylerstableford.com/news, I'll keep updating the talks that I'm giving. And I've given, probably 1 to 2 dozen talks a year around the country, most of them sponsored by Canon and Adobe.
Hey, thanks for sharing stuff like this.
I pulled this up for the
as a Canon
viewers.
shooter, this is great.
Amazing.
Oh, good. Yeah, so on my news blog, I have some downloads here of my settings for the Canon 5D Mark II, and also my Lightroom processing settings of what Draper and I have come to as our favorite ways to get get what we want out of our images.
Yeah, I thought that was so valuable for anyone out there, especially people that are shooting adventure sports, same kind of material as you.
Plus
how do you set your camera?
all the gear you use, the Gitso tripods, the Wacom Cintiq, the Canon lenses.
Do you have your 2 gear items with you?
I do have 2 gear items
He's
with
going
me,
to share
yes.
real quick, one obscure and one standard.
Let's
his
do it.
favorite gear.
I'm not sure which one's obscure or standard, but here's a
They're
relatively
both
new
obscure,
piece here. This is a small HD, the DP6 field monitor that I use.
Oh, that's neat.
And see if we can get it. It's you know, the main thing is I'd say, okay, I came to it through shooting DSLR video, where you want to have, you know, an image of what's happening. It's critical for finding perfect focus because we want to shoot at shallow depth of field. But I've come to love it for everything from, you know, using it in place of having a laptop on a set with art directors. It speeds up our workflow, you know, enormously. You can also use it for landscape shots, I find. It's amazing to look at this, and then you're standing and you're looking at your image before you even shoot it, you know, just in live view. And looking and saying, well, how does that look? Because now you're looking at it from more of the perspective of how you'd look at a finished print than you would with your eye,
right,
you know, pressed hard against the eyepiece. So that's one of the things that's really, you know, revolutionized my photography that way. The other one I have is the lighting kit that I use, and I'll see if I can bring it up here. But this is the Hensel lithium Porty, the 1200 watt second strobe packs here, and this is essentially the lighting secrets behind all of our commercial lighting stuff here. The beauty of it, it's like any high powered strobe and such, but it's got really beautiful daylight balance, and you can obviously add gels if you want to do tungsten balance and stuff. But it's beautiful light in all range of conditions, and the transmitter that sits in your hot shoe. I can control 3 different strobes, you know, channels of strobes, and all the flash outputs right on top by dialing the power up and down. So that's a huge thing. Essentially, you know, my assistants can set the lights up and essentially leave them there and be doing other things, and I can control all the lighting as, you know, daylight changes to dusk quickly. So this is a flash pack I'd check out. I think the value for the product that you get for the money is amazing. So those
is that what's on that extension pole there?
Yes. Yep.
Amazing.
Yeah. So there we go.
Well, we're going to have you back because I have a million more questions, Taylor.
You over-prepare.
I'm like, I haven't even gone through like a third of them. So we're going to bring you back on. Give it some time.
Sure,
Give you a
I'd
little
love
break,
to, Catherine. No, it's really nice to talk to you. Yeah, and as long as I can ask some questions about your work too, because I love.
I know. You know, this is the one regret I have in doing this show is that we don't get to highlight Catherine's great work as much as I'd love to.
Thank you.
She's so great, but you bring us such great photographers too, and that's really
that's what it all comes about.
It's so fun.
And you guys check out Tyler's blog. He also, you saw that huge PDF of all his camera settings. He also has a really nice workflow walkthrough of Lightroom. He's not afraid to let it all out, secrets.
I love
secrets that aren't really secrets, but he just is a great sharer. On a second note, I want to congratulate our last guest, Colby Brown. He was in the hospital last night. He has a baby.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, so all of you out there, if you're following Colby, he's a G Plus fanatic, so send him a little note on G Plus. And Tyler, people say you need to get on G Plus.
I need to get on G Plus. I've got all these. This sounds crazy. I know I've gotten a number of G Plus invitations, and truth be told, I don't know what it is, and so I've just declined everything.
What is this? I don't want it. I don't need it. Don't send it to me. But I'm thinking.
I'm dating myself. I sound ancient.
A lot of photographers are now using Google Plus to great effect.
It's a great community. I'm like, I can't. I think I should be paid.
Today.
I should be a paid evangelist for Google.
Well, I've created a circle of photographers, and if I'm ever in the mood for great images, I just go there. And between you and Trey and everybody who publishes so many great images on here, Thomas Hawk. I want to say Tony Hawk.
There he is.
Look, there's a picture of Taylor already. Yes. Tyler already on the show.
It's so funny. I'm kind of addicted.
Are you doing this while we're doing the show?
Well, I put it beforehand.
Okay.
All right.
It was right before the show.
Oh, I get it. So you had a picture of him, and you because I got
it ready.
That's
people
awesome.
like pictures, but it's so funny because I am addicted to Google and Google Plus, and Trish was like, "You got to stop. You need to set some boundaries here." And so her trick was just log on to Twitter, and then you'll stop using. You'll get bored in 30 seconds because it is.
It's true. It's not nearly
as
exciting.
engaging and interactive. So.
Well.
But anyway, I wanted to say Congratulations to Colby. And then also announce our guest for next week.
Yes.
Very excited to have Vincent Laporte coming on.
Talk about Tyler. Talk about video. I mean, this is the guy who, put the 5D Mark II on the map with his amazing videos.
I know. It's so poetic. It makes me want to cry when I look at his stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, Tyler.
I learned
I'm going to put you on the spot.
Laporte. Absolutely.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Why should people tune in next week to watch Vincent?
I tell you honestly, I check Vince's blog every time there's a new posting on there. He has taught me so much in terms of I'm an Aspen, Colorado, photographer and cinematographer. I do not have my finger on the pulse of LA or New York or every new workflow that's happening, and Vincent does. And so every new product that comes out, he's a lot of times he's field testing them in his productions and with his super talented assistants. So anyway, I look to his blog daily.
He does amazing stuff.
Yeah.
This is a Vincent Laporte ad done, I'm sure, with a 5D Mark II.
Yeah, his work's just at the top of the world for sure.
Yeah. Well, but Tyler, we had a great time with you,
you're
and we
amazing.
thank you so much.
Can't wait to have you
Catherine.
back.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your prep. You did a great job.
Oh, no, and you as well.
you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, glad to be here. I'd do it again anytime. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Tyler.
Bye,
Take
Tyler.
care.
Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you, Catherine, for
Thanks,
doing such
Leo.
a great job. CatherineHall.net if you want to see more of Catherine's images. And we will be back here. We do this show every Tuesday around 1:30 Pacific, 4:30 Eastern at live.twit.tv. Next week, Vince Laporte. But we get so many great photographers. Go back through our catalog. I think this show has changed quite a bit. We've evolved quite a bit since the earliest episodes. And if you haven't seen all the episodes, please do go back through the catalog and take a look, because these are timeless. And we have interviewed so many great photographers.
Yeah.
And it's just really fun to see this amazing art. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
TWiT
Bye-bye.
Photo. Bye-bye.